Hey everyone, I'm Martin Percival, also known as the Denver Condo Queen, and it's time for your Denver condo market update. And this month there are really three stories I want you to pay attention to. First, the overall Denver condo market is slowing in terms of transaction volume and days on market, but prices are proving surprisingly resilient. Second, downtown Denver, specifically 80202, is giving buyers considerably more negotiating power, while still maintaining relatively stable pricing per square foot. And third, there are some important changes happening with condo financing that both buyers and existing condo owners need to understand. Oh, and one more thing, luxury condos are selling. So there's a lot to unpack this month. Let's get into it. Across Denver City and County, we had 137 condo closings in July. That's down from 146 in June. That's a decrease of about 6.2% month over month. Compared with July of last year, when we had 164 closings, sales activity was down approximately 16.5%. So yes, fewer condos are changing hands, but here's where the story gets interesting, because fewer sales have not translated into dramatically lower prices. Median close price was $350,000 in July. That's down slightly from June, a decrease of about 2.6% month over month. But compared with July of 2025, when the median close price was $341,000, we're actually about 2.6% higher year over year. So, despite fewer transactions, median prices have remained surprisingly resilient. And price per square foot tells a very similar story. The median was $356 per square foot in July, compared with $349 in June. That's an increase of approximately 1.8% month over month. Compared with July of last year, when we were at $361 per square foot, we're down only about 1.6%. So overall, pricing per square foot is remarkably close to where we were 1 year ago. Where we are seeing the market shift more noticeably is in negotiation. Sellers received an average of 98.45% of their final list price, but compared with their original list price, that number falls to 95.7%. And I think that difference tells us quite a lot about the current market. Sellers are eventually getting fairly close to their most recent asking price, but many are having to adjust their expectations before they get there. So in other words, the market is correcting overpricing. If you price appropriately from the beginning, you have much better chance of attracting buyers. If you start too high, today's buyers are demonstrating that they're perfectly willing to wait. And we're seeing that in the days on market. Median days on market increased from 36 days in June to 48 days in July. That's a 33% increase in just 1 month. The average increased from 56 to 72. Interestingly though, compared with July of last year, we're still doing better. The median condo took 60 days to sell in July 2025, compared with 48 this July. So we've slowed from June, but we're not necessarily weaker than last year across every measurement. Another number I'm watching very closely is expired listings. We had 185 expired listings in July, essentially unchanged from 184 in June, and slightly above the 176 recorded in July of last year. We also had 50 withdrawn listings, and that reinforces the same message. Some sellers simply aren't getting the response they expected. So my Denver-wide takeaway really is, this is not a collapsing condo market, but it is absolutely a selective condo market. Buyers have become more discerning. They're paying attention to the price. They're also paying attention to HOA fees. They're paying attention to buying condition. They're paying attention to insurance. And increasingly, they're paying attention to the financial health of the HOA. There's one segment of the market I really want to highlight this month because it may surprise some people. Luxury condos are selling. In the over $1 million segment, sales increased 36% month over month and an impressive 81% year over year. So that's significant because while we're seeing longer market times and greater price sensitivity across the broad condo market, buyers at the luxury end are still making their moves. To me, that demonstrates the resilience of Denver's luxury condo market. Now, that does not mean every $1 million condo is flying off the shelf. Luxury buyers can afford to be selective. They're looking carefully at the building, the location, the view, the floor plan, the amenities, the HOA. But when the right property comes onto the market, at the right price, buyers are clearly responding. And I think there's an important distinction here. A slower market does not mean there aren't buyers. It means buyers are becoming more discerning about what deserves their money. And we're seeing very clear evidence of that at the luxury end. So if you're selling a property over $1 million, I wouldn't look at broader market headlines and automatically assume there isn't demand, because there is. But presentation, positioning, pricing, and understanding exactly who that luxury buyer is becomes incredibly important. Luxury buyers haven't disappeared, they're just buying selectively. Let's move downtown, because 80202 tells an even more interesting story. There were 23 closed condo sales in July, compared with just 13 in June. That's an increase of almost 77% month over month. And it's exactly the same number of closings we saw in July of last year. So transaction activity downtown actually strengthened considerably from June. Now, let's look at price. Median close price was $529,000. That's essentially unchanged from $530,000 in June, but compared with $475,000 in July of 25, median close price was approximately 11.4% higher. Now, I want to put a giant asterisk beside that number. 80202 is a relatively small condo market. The particular mix of buildings, floor plans and price points that close during any individual month can move so that the median can change substantially. So I would absolutely not interpret that number as saying your downtown Denver condo suddenly appreciated 11%. What it tells us is that the median property sold in July 26 was considerably more expensive than the median property sold in July 25. That's an important distinction. Price per square foot gives us a more stable comparison. Median in July was $494. That's almost unchanged from $498 in June, and only about 1.2% below the $500 a square foot recorded in July of 25. So from a price per square foot standpoint, downtown Denver is actually remarkably stable year over year. But now we get to the number that really caught my attention. The median 80202 condo that closed in July spent 109 days on the market. In June, it was only 15 days, and in July last year, it was 86. The average this July was 105. So yes, units are selling, and yes, prices have held up, but buyers are taking their time and they're negotiating. The average closing price was 96% of the final list price and only 93% of the original list price. And that original list price number is particularly interesting because it suggests that sellers who originally came to the market too aggressively ultimately had to adjust. And this is where downtown Denver becomes particularly interesting for buyers. You've got price per square foot that's relatively stable year over year. You've got properties taking longer to sell, and you've got sellers ultimately accepting considerably less than their original asking prices in aggregate. That does not mean every seller is desperate. They're not. But it does mean qualified buyers can be more strategic. You can compare buildings, you can compare floor plans, you can investigate the HOA, you can look at resale histories, you can compare older buildings with new construction. And you can actually take the time to decide whether a condo is right for you. You're not necessarily making a decision in 15 minutes because 5 other buyers are standing behind you. And that brings us to something else that's becoming increasingly important when comparing condo buildings. This is something I think every condo buyer and every existing condo owner needs to understand. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have continued updating the way condominium projects are evaluated. And the important takeaway is this. When you're buying a condo, the lender isn't necessarily just underwriting you. They're also evaluating the condominium project. Depending on the loan and the project, that review can include things like the HOA finances, the reserve funding, insurance, deferred maintenance, special assessments, any litigation, and the overall physical and financial condition of the project. There have also been changes affecting project review eligibility, including expanded waiver treatment for certain smaller projects, 10 units and fewer. For larger projects, applicable project review requirements continue to matter. So I wouldn't characterize this simply as every building with more than 10 units now gets exactly the same full review. The actual review depends on the project and financing, but the direction is very clear. The financial health of your condo association matters, and there's another major change coming. Under Freddie Mac's current standard budget requirements, an HOA generally needs to allocate at least 10% of its annual assessment income towards replacement reserves. For mortgage applications received on or after January the 4th in 2027, Freddie Mac is increasing that standard minimum from 10% to 15%. And that's pretty significant. So why should you care? You may be sitting there thinking, I already own my condo, why do I care about what Freddie Mac does? Because someday you may want to sell it, and your future buyer may need financing. Just imagine you're a buyer, your credit is fantastic, you've got the down payment, you've been pre-approved, everything looks perfect. Then the lender reviews the condominium project and discovers an issue with the HOA insurance, deferred maintenance, or another eligibility requirement. Suddenly, the problem isn't your ability to qualify, it's the building. And for existing owners, that potentially becomes a resale issue. Because if financing becomes difficult in your building, your potential buyer pool can shrink. That's why I think HOA financial health is going to become an increasingly important part of condo marketability. This also changes how we think about HOA dues. Buyers naturally love low HOA fees, I understand that, but extremely low HOA dues are not automatically a good thing. The better question is this HOA collecting enough money to responsibly operate, maintain and plan for the future of the building? Because buildings age, elevators eventually need work, roofs need replacing, parking structures need repairs. The mechanical systems age, exterior components deteriorate. And somebody eventually has to pay for all of it. I'd much rather see a responsibly managed association gradually preparing for those expenses than an association keeping dues artificially low and eventually handing owners a massive special assessment. And this is why I always tell my condo buyers, you're not just buying the condo, you're buying into the building and the HOA. The kitchen can be gorgeous, the view can be spectacular, the rooftop pool can be fabulous. But before we get completely seduced by all of that, I want to know what's happening financially behind the scenes. So what does July's market actually tell us? When I put everything together, I think July gives us a surprisingly nuanced condo market. Denver condo prices have remained relatively resilient, sales volume is down. Market times are increasing, buyers have more negotiating leverage. The luxury market is showing impressive transaction activity, and downtown Denver is showing an interesting combination of stronger closing activity, stable price per square foot numbers, longer market times, and greater negotiation from original asking prices. At the same time, condo financing is putting greater emphasis on the health of the building itself. And that means buyers need to become more sophisticated. For buyers, this may actually be one of the better environments we've had in years to shop intelligently rather than react emotionally. You have time to compare, you have room to negotiate, and you have the opportunity to investigate not only the condo but the building you're buying into. For sellers, strategy matters more than ever. Price correctly, prepare properly, understand your competition, know who your buyer is, and understand your HOA. Because in today's condo market, the condition of the building's finances may be almost as important as the condition of your kitchen. And if you're selling at the luxury end, don't assume the buyers have disappeared. Numbers tell us otherwise. The luxury buyers are there. They're simply being selective. So, I'm Martin Percival, Denver Condo Queen. If you're thinking about buying or selling a condo in Denver, or you want to know what's happening specifically in your building, please reach out and I'd be happy to take a deeper look. 303-868-1011, or you can reach me at condokween.com, that's Condo Kween.